Thank you, Angie. Let's start with introductions in the room. Chris, do you want to start?
Hi, I'm Chris Ogren, Houseless Response Analyst for the Coordinated Houseless Response Office.
I'm Nick Levi, Deschutes County Administrator.
Steve Rakowski, Embedded City Manager.
Andrea Lum, Sister City Council.
Patty Dare, Deschutes County Commissioner.
Megan Perkins, Spence City Councilor. Kat Zwicker, Redmond City Councilor.
Casey Carpstein, Deschutes County Sheriff's Office. I'm my special assignment school resource officer, but this summer I'm actually assigned out China Hat Road.
Barry Prosser, Assistant City Manager, Sisters.
Jordan Wheeler, City Manager, Sisters, everyone.
Tony DeBone, Deschutes County Commissioner.
Mark Bitzel, Patrol Captain, U.S. Forest Service.
Eric King, City Manager, Fed.
Nick Derby, City Event. Stacy Whitty, the Executive Director for Whitty.
Thank you, Stacy. Thanks for coming today too. Okay, good. All right. Anyone online that we see? Angie?
Good afternoon, Tammy, or good morning, Tammy Bainey, COIC.
Hey, Tammy. Anyone else?
Jeff Wilschmacher is
Oh.
present.
Jeff? Jeffrey? Is, no, I have a son named Jeff, so I can do that, I guess. Jeffrey, where are you? Okay, and Dan Meritor is not on there. Okay, all right, thank you so much. I think we're good to go. Approval of our minutes. I did have one small correction to the minutes, Chris.
Okay.
I think it's on third page. It says, because there were 3 of our commissioners were at the last meeting, it says commissioner in the second paragraph. I think that was my question, so I would just add a dare.
Oh, okay, under 6, the incident committee.
Right above 6.
Oh, okay. Oh, Commissioner there, I see. Okay.
It just says commissioner.
Yep.
Were there any other corrections to the minutes?
I would move approval of the minutes as corrected.
And there are 2 sets of minutes, so there's a set of minutes
Oh, right.
from
We'll
the
do these
7th.
first. Yes. These are from the 7th or July 20th.
That would be July 20th minutes as corrected.
All second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, and then we have the 27th minutes. Is there a motion for those?
I move to approve the minutes from Thursday, July 27th.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, great. So we're done with those. Tammy, the floor is yours.
Wonderful. And it won't let me show my video, but I did comb my hair. So, but at least you can hear me. And I know that our chair is in the room as well. So wanted to let you know that the COIC board had an opportunity to discuss bringing the CHRO office under the umbrella of COIC. It's important to note that that would be a dotted line, and meaning that the CHRO office would work independently and keep its governing structure and everything. But what we would offer would be the sort of back of the house support. That's fiscal, that's staffing, that's monitoring, reporting, those sorts of things that are required. And so our board is encouraged by the momentum that the CHRO office has. They do see an opportunity for us to be looking at a regional approach to this. In particular, Jefferson County is very interested in learning from what the CHRO office is piloting. And so the answer is yes. They would like me to continue to work with the administrators and city managers to work out details such as budget, staffing, outcomes, scope of work, those sorts of things. And we are right now working back and forth on the scheduling to get something on the schedule with all of us very soon. So we should be able to bring something back to your September meeting. But right now, the answer is yes, they're encouraged. And I would leave it there for any questions that you might have.
Great, thank you so much. The answer is yes. Do you think in 30 days we'll be able to have more of the details taken care of?
Yes, so we should be able to bring back some draft documents in that time frame. We are looking at an October 1st transition time frame, but again, it's just dependent upon any of the details that I can't imagine there's something we get hung up on. It's relatively straightforward, and everyone, really you are us, and so this is a very natural sort of partnership. So I don't foresee anything that we haven't discussed previously. And so, I would imagine that we'd have something draft to you by your next meeting.
Excellent, sounds good. Any other questions?
Nope, that's great.
Okay, well, we've actually allocated you 20 minutes, so
We are
That's okay. We have plenty to cover
I
today.
know,
so
we
we
do.
can move
I
on,
just-
that's okay.
this is great. Okay, thank you so much.
Just a desire that with these documents, because I know that I would be interested in having ample time to review that stuff before
Yeah.
the meeting, because I think it's important to really look through that thoroughly and make sure that we're all getting what we want out of this relationship.
That sounds great, okay.
So our next meeting will be on the 21st of September, I believe. Okay, just want to put that in the minutes so we know.
Yes.
So we don't feel that we need to have any review or a work session with the transition prior to the public meeting on the 29th? Good to just,
That's a good question.
Great question.
I feel like
We
it's
probably,
abundantly hopeful that we could just do it all on the 29th, but we might need a little homework.
yeah, maybe it depends on, what we see from COAC might necessitate like another follow-up meeting. So I think we can just agree to be flexible there, and if things come in and you guys would like to have a work session about it, I'm happy to facilitate that. Does that sound okay?
That's
Good.
Sounds great. According to our minutes, we always have to be flexible. One person or three can call a meeting, so we can definitely do that.
And Chair,
Yes.
just September 21st, just so it's on our
Oh,
radar.
we're gone.
It's also the Association of Oregon Counties. I was just gonna share that.
Thank you so much for reminding me.
Klamath County, so just so it's on everybody's radar.
Right, that's an AOC
It's a
regional meeting.
Focused specifically on our region, so it's important.
I know.
Yeah.
Okay,
We can maybe chat offline if we decide we need to reschedule, or if you need to designate Counselor Perkins to run the next meeting,
right,
either way.
okay.
And it really depends how quickly Tammy can get some draft documents out. And, so that if there is stuff to review ahead of time, we can do that and
So
Yeah.
make it.
Tammy, are you still hearing us? How soon?
I am.
Yeah, how soon do you think you could get a rough draft to us to kind of eyeball this transition?
Counselor, we are working on it right now, and because we had anticipated that the board would be supportive of some variation of partnership, we've already started on the documents. And so we're not starting from scratch, and I would imagine that we could get something to you by the 1st of September.
That's incredible, thank you.
Wow,
No,
September 1st.
If I may, they haven't had a chance to go to our board yet. And so our next board meeting is the first Thursday of September. So I just always want to add that caveat that our board has the opportunity to, give their insights as well. And we'd want to make sure that that's incorporated. And I would also make sure that everyone knows our meetings are open to the public. And so if there's, engagement that any of the CHRO board members would like to have with our board, you're always welcome there as well.
So that means your meeting will be September 7th.
Correct.
Okay, all right. Okay, anything else to follow up on? Chris, what do you think?
Oh, sounds great to me.
Okay, all right, now we have a bylaws discussion. Mickey, Chris.
So I can start. So Mickey and I, staff, took in the board's comments at the last meeting and made some changes to the bylaws. And so this is a clean version, but we have a very ugly track changes, lots of comments document that we're happy to share on the back end, but figured, so we didn't need to have that in front of everybody today. But I think the major changes that were made a lot of Andrea's comments or Counselor Blum's comments about more clearly delineating the role of the advisory committee, the CHRO board, and then the office. And so hopefully we captured your wishes there. And then we also included some updated language with kind of the HLC representative. So you'll see that they're currently listed as a liaison to the board, which would be a non-voting seat. And then Counselor Zwicker noticed something that I was going to bring up as well. Let's see, what page is it on? So it's under the attendance policy, which is technically the third page of the document.
It is.
And that last paragraph, prior notice must be given to the office staff if a planned absence occurs. A board member will no longer be able to serve on the board if they fail to participate in any scheduled board meetings for 90 days. And so there was just a little bit of a conversation. There's some vagueness there, and it might be worth adding a little bit more clarity.
Well, I think it should be an unexcused, because I think things come up, and so just like Patty having something, so it should be an unexcused, and it should be a number of unexcused absences within that 90-day period. So if you miss 2 out of the 3 meetings, quite obviously, you should probably be replaced by someone else.
And I think another question that would be helpful for some direction on is, it says a board member will no longer be able to serve. Does that mean that, like, you know, just as an example, say, sorry, Commissioner Dare, I'm going to use you. Say,
Well, thank you.
say Commissioner Dare doesn't come to any meetings for 90 days. They're all unexcused. Does that mean that Deschutes County no longer gets to participate in the CHRO board?
That
Or
means
would it,
somebody else.
would it mean that we would elect
I think
somebody
you
else?
should
I think,
clarify
yeah.
that, but
Yeah.
somebody else would be appointed from that
Governing.
governing entity, because that's
Yes.
their role. So like if I were to not show up, then they could choose a different counselor to fill this seat.
And you, and the city of Redmond would choose on,
Yes.
okay, perfect.
Yes,
That's
how I
helpful.
got here.
Okay, fantastic.
So we'll add that wording.
Yep.
Okay.
I will make those changes. Are there any, have folks had an opportunity to review the changes? Are there any other questions or points of consideration?
I would have an ask, which is each time this document comes out, that it have a date on it.
Yes.
Because I've got 20,000
Yep.
different copies,
Yeah, and just throw page numbers on the bottom. It's
Okay.
a real easy click.
Yeah,
Happy
so
to do
that
it.
we can absolutely say, oh, page 3. That would be helpful.
I appreciate the changes.
Yeah, the whole,
Where-
yeah, the whole bylaws. So.
We are mentioned as board and then that there's the advisory committee. Is that kind of what you were hoping for,
Yes.
Andrea?
Yeah,
It's a lot clearer.
Yeah.
The only question I have for the board is under public comment, each regular meeting will end with an opportunity. Do you want to be specific at an
Oh,
end, or do you want that to be really at the
It's just
discretion of the chair, vice chair, and just say
Mm-hmm.
each regular meeting will, include an opportunity for public comment?
I think we'll include.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because if we have an overabundance of time left, great, but if we are running at the end of the clock, we may not.
And there may be an opportunity,
Maybe
there may be a time when
beginning,
you wish to have
yeah.
public comments to start of the meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Just so it's your
If there's
discretion.
a bunch of people here and they have to leave,
Yeah. Okay, I like that. Good change.
Great, thank you.
And then maybe a question for COIC if Tammy's still on, but I don't know if we want to vote on this today or if we want to wait until the conversation, so see what COIC proposes before a vote happens. I don't know.
Tammy's still there.
Yep.
Tammy, you have some input on that?
I would say that it might make sense for us to go ahead and wait. I think you've done your due diligence with, your own operation of how you want to proceed. The only caveat might be, there has been some discussion about potentially asking Neighbor Impact to also be an ex officio member, in particular, or in conjunction with HLC. The reason there being around prevention services and a lot of that, continuum work that gets done through their organization. I don't know, it's not a significant shift to your bylaws, but certainly something that could come forward. So I would say go ahead and hold off for now, and we maybe take them as one felt swoop.
Fine with me.
So I think waiting is appropriate. Is that consensus with everyone?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, so we'll wait.
Mickey, is there anything you wanna add?
No, you got it all. Thank
Okay.
you.
We're almost there though.
Oh, and one brief update while we're still on this. We did submit the strategic plan on Monday. The staff at the state that's responsible for reviewing that is out on vacation. So I will let you know as soon as we get confirmation that we're good to go, but it has been submitted.
Excellent.
But you did get a confirming email that they have it, right?
I got the out of office, so
Yeah.
I think that
Must have
counts.
So if they come-
Respond from my.
From Mike, yeah, that's true. That's a good
So
point.
Chris, if they come back with a lot of things last minute, can I say that the lack of sense of urgency on their part due to vacation doesn't?
I think we have a strong negotiating point there, yeah.
Just checking.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Chris.
Yeah.
So that's good. All right, so we do have some people in the room. We're talking now, public agency roundtable planning. Thank you so much for attachment D. I don't know if you all have seen it. I did send you an
Excellent.
email, which I just told you were not available till 2. Okay, so I know, on the attachment D, sisters, actually, that is the Forest Service.
Yeah,
Yes,
that's correct.
BLM.
So if I may just
You wanna go
provide
over it?
some notes about the attachment D. This is not an official point in time count that is usually produced by HLC or Continuum of Care. It's missing a lot of information such as unsheltered student who are probably couch surfing or living with relatives, for example. Information is fluid, it's rough estimates. For example, I heard ODOT might be clearing camps. They're not, they're cleaning, but let's just say if and when there's a camp clear up, this data would already be old information. But you did want information about where are the encampments at? So I approached a few service providers and outreach and case managers, boots on the ground folks. And I asked them, what can we share? What kind of map, where we're not providing exact locations of people and putting unwanted attention on our houseless population, and this is what they were able to share. But again, this data could be already old and inaccurate. It is already inaccurate, so, but I think it gives us a sense of like, where are the encampments that we didn't even know that's where they were located before, so.
No, I think it's excellent. Thank you so much for doing that, because we've been asking for something like this for quite a few months, maybe a year. And it's, at least it gives us a range. I was trying to add up, okay, so plus or minus 1,500 at like the top end maybe, but somewhere in there. And yeah, so appreciate this. It's just, you know what? Because we're dealing with people, it's never going to be like exact tomorrow, but at least maybe yesterday this was exact. In a range.
In a range.
Yeah, in a range. So I think that's why we feel that it is an emergency to have our roundtable and to go from there. So.
Yeah, definitely, it definitely illustrates the problem, right? And the importance of this roundtable coming up, particularly in those areas that are outside of the cities themselves, so. Thank you for this. It's important for us to see this information.
And I think everybody saw where so many fires are being started by people this year for some reason and not. And so therefore, it's just kind of nice to know what are we dealing with? I know that you were just on do you want to introduce yourself, Deputy? You were just on the fire, weren't you? The one the other day, south of Bend?
Fuzzdale Fire,
Yes.
yeah. So it's Officer Ditzel.
Oh, Officer Ditzel, maybe he has a better, apparently it was started by someone. A person, not lightning.
I'm not the investigator on this fire, but it's been a preliminary investigation. Leads us to believe that it is probable human caused fire. It's not linked to any encampments. That's what we have.
And it was like 12 acres or something eventually, and it is all contained.
Yeah, they have dozer line around the fire, and they're working on lava operation dozer.
Okay.
Could I ask staff, sort of what the next steps are with the roundtable. And I know that you have a meeting tomorrow and we just want to go for that.
So we had hoped to have the meeting tomorrow. Obviously that's not going to happen. So we have pivoted, and Friday's meeting is going to be an internal staff meeting, just so we can meet with some of these public land agency folks and kind of agree on some baselines before we have a big public conversation. And so there's currently a doodle poll out for board members so that we can identify a time, hopefully before the end of the month. That's the goal, to host a broader public roundtable. And I think really the goal coming out of Friday's meeting with staff is to identify, number one, which organizations own public lands that could potentially be used as an authorized camp. So not necessarily like, a city council or a county commission has approved this already, but just like, does the land exist?
Yeah.
And then the other outcome from Friday's meeting, the goal is to identify what is needed to potentially operationalize something like that, whether it be staff or financial resources or a zoning change or any number of things. And so really just trying to get some consensus from staff before we have a big public meeting.
I think that makes sense.
Yeah, I agree.
So that we're not saying, well, why can't you do X? or
No,
why can't you
I think that makes sense to have some guardrails and baselines, because ultimately we want to partner with these people for solutions and not alienate them.
And in terms of attendance at that meeting, it's really gonna be, we heard you in the last meeting, a focus on public land agencies and not as much of a focus on providers yet, because we want to just kind of agree on what the problem is and what the needs are, probably propose a few sets of potential solutions, and then run that by providers to see, what might need to be shifted to have the best impact.
Are there state agencies involved in this that who would they be?
So we're looking at having ODOT join, Department of State Lands. I don't remember if State Parks is planning on joining. Let me look.
So there's no state forestry lands around Deschutes County?
That is a good question. I know that we have BLM and Forest Service, but I don't know if they're state forests.
No, I don't think that we-
Because I worry that, that involving federal agencies is going to be far more difficult than state agencies, which are also getting the governor's urgency issue.
Agreed. And that is also a hope, like an outcome from Friday's discussion, is if folks are unable or unwilling to play, we want that to be known, right? So we don't want to get
Don't
2
spend
months
time
out.
on it.
Exactly. We don't want to be 2 months out and then have somebody be like, our hands are tied, we can't participate in this.
Right.
So we're going to call that out real early. And if an organization doesn't have public land available, there are other resources that could be made available to help with the process too. So
Well, I'm really happy that Mark's here today. Maybe Mark,
I think Eric, on
Eric,
that topic
do you wanna say
specifically.
I just wanted to also share that we've talked to the governor's office, Matt, who is part of the efforts to help the
Housing and
citizens.
Community Solutions.
Correct, yeah, Matt is going to be attending Friday's meeting also
Oh, good.
to help ensure collaboration with other state agencies. So I think
That's really
even if somebody's not at the table, I think that's what Matt is there to sort of help us identify what the barriers might be.
Yeah,
He
and
was part.
we want to make sure all this work complements each other, doesn't work
Yeah.
at odds with each
Right.
other. And I think that's why
Would it-
this Friday meeting will help.
Would it be appropriate for you folks to talk about the meeting you had with the governor's office and what that resolved in?
Yes, it resolved that she doesn't like my idea of using the Gales property right outside the UTB, which is 9 acres. Because the way I look at it, we've got probably 250 at Dirt World, and if we have 250 homeless at China Hat, we really need to offer security and maintenance, of everything, services, and to have it located on 9 acres would be incredibly helpful. So she was really clear about that. We do have property, fortunately, inside the UGB in Redmond, significant property for Redmond to use, but we really need something down here. So they are currently, Matt Garrett, who runs OEM, I think that we have, 24 fires in the state right now. I think that's what I heard. Anyway, Matt is looking at state land, seeing if there's any state property that we can put together. But to me, putting something on 1 acre is not really helpful. And we need, when you're talking about 500 people, and we need to be able to say, I've been told that a lot of those people will honestly go somewhere if we have security and they can feel safe. I know there's gonna be some that aren't going to want to, but the ones that do, we've got to offer that to them. Fortunately, we just got in services to the 50-acre code enforcement that the county has been dealing with in the Juniper area. And we're doing some security there too. So I just feel like that's incredibly important, and services and, water, trash pickup, toilets, all those things. So
after that discussion, does that mean that your meeting on Friday can eliminate outside the UGB in the Bend area and in the area from consideration? That was a final no, don't bother doing that, or?
she said we're still going through all the available possibilities. So the state really didn't have a list of all their assets to look at. So, and the governor was really incredibly emphatic that she doesn't want to go outside the UGB, but I am going to see her in person at the Pendleton Roundup, because she's gonna be at the governor's lunch.
So you're not stopping?
No, I
pushing
mean,
for it.
I'm gonna,
Okay.
hopefully Matt Garrett is going to come up with some opportunities. But Crusher number 2 was presented to me. And I remember that in the back of my brain. Crusher number 2 was 0.18 miles from Sutera, which is that chemical plant. It's from right by 2 schools, and it's right close to Cascade Village, which has 150 people that are average age 75. So I didn't feel that Crusher 2 was, that was kind of knocked out of the possibilities at 21. And I didn't feel like that was really safe enough.
Just to clarify, it didn't, there were other reasons why it didn't, was knocked out of possibilities, and that was the CCNRs that we have at Juniper Ridge. But I drove that, I was at that site and drove to the school, and it's a good distance from the school, and it would take quite the hike to get from Crusher site number 2 to the nearest elementary school. I just worry if we continue to be want the perfect site, just like it's never a perfect time to have a child. There's never going to be a perfect site. For, we have to do with, we have to use the tools that we have right now and the land that we have right now. And I think if I had to guess what the governor was trying to get across, I think that's exactly what she was trying to say is let's see what we have inside the UGB and let's make something work, because something is better than nothing.
Well, she was saying start small, and to me, considering that we have 500 people that we really need to move, we really need to have them somewhere where they can have services, and we have a water truck there or whatever it takes, because we have, if you go to the camps, you see they've started a lot of fires.
Well, and so what I think, and again, there's multiple ways to look at this, Commissioner Adair, but I do believe that if we eat the elephant a small bite at a time, if we have to have 50 people here and 30 there, it's at least forward momentum. It's not, we can't service 1 because we can't service 500. And I think that might have been the context of the conversation, having not been there, but we've had these same conversations in developing the East Side campus and Oasis with our providers and site suitability. And they were very tough conversations of it's not going to be perfect, it's going to be messy. And then as we get things in place, we'll clean up the edges. But it's a transition and change, and working with what you have is often not a process of perfection.
I do think it's important to mention too, and this is my interpretation of County Counsel Dave Doyle's legal interpretation, but he mentioned this in a public meeting a couple months ago, or maybe a month or so ago, when we were talking about the camping code changes. And he had said that any community that wants to enforce camping restrictions or a camping ban, and that wants to needs to create their own authorized camping space. So it wouldn't be I don't think it would work where like if the county created a managed camp that say Bend or Redmond could then say, okay, you can go to the county's camp. My interpretation from that conversation was that each organization would have to have their own place that they're responsible for. And so I don't know if one big managed camp would work.
Okay, well,
Just throwing it out there.
it's definitely, it's, sometimes things come back on the county because we're told we need to do more for the situation. And we'd already, allocated millions of dollars for it. The good news is there's 45 acres in Redmond, which they're thinking about using, which are appropriate. And then we also have the 12 acres that we've given for Oasis Village, which is 2 acres, and then it's surrounding with another 10 acres. So that end of the county really does look like it's got a good path forward. And so that's the good news. So, if you, I believe do you know how many acres are at pressure number 2?
It's 2 or 3.
2 or 3, yeah. Well, that's better than not. It's better than 1. So that's the good news.
If I may, and that's the great thing about the upcoming emergency roundtable, it's gonna help identify the gaps and what we together could go to the governor with and say, here's where we need help, whether that's funding or land use waiver and what have you.
Funding, yes, we've definitely asked for funding. And, that's the good news. And then did mention again Deer Ridge, because it's sitting half empty, and she said she wasn't really excited about that, which is unfortunate because it is there and it is ready, and some great mental health services can be provided there, plus mental substance use disorder. And currently a lot of homeless are dealing with that. There's, I don't want to say what Casey had shared the other, Officer Carpson shared the other day, but anyway, it is, sounds like we're having a planning meeting tomorrow. Will you have an email out to us and explain what you've come up with after that meeting? Could you do something like that before you take?
We can definitely put some notes together. I won't be able to attend tomorrow's meeting, but I'll make sure to coordinate and make sure that there's some notes that come out of that so you guys know what to expect. And then I also want to acknowledge that Tammy has her hand raised.
Oh, good. Tammy?
Thank you. I just wanted to note that speaking of funding, I'll be in the room wearing the MAC hat as well to bring forward the opportunity of some eligible funding that could be able to complement the discussion that you just had. So some of it is not eligible, but where it's gray, we will push, and where it's clear, we will see if we can come up with some funding. We do have additional funding at the MAC that could go toward this purpose. So Chris and I will be walking that closely together.
So how much, Tammy?
At this moment, I couldn't say what could be eligible for the spend that you are currently discussing. Services is where the funding would be most likely eligible, but it does need to be directed toward getting people not just into a managed camp, but into shelter or housing. But I think that the governor's office is requesting, for example, in the letters that she sent, connection to the MAC, that if we meet our goals that we have already laid out, which is the 111 new shelter beds and the 161 households rehoused, we can use funding that we have left over with less restrictions. So all of it is evolving and changing almost daily, which can be frustrating, or it can be a good thing. And in this regard, we'd want it to be a good thing. Right now we have just under 800,000 that is left, but much of that will need to go towards services to support the existing commitments that we've made. But we may have a project that does not go forward, which could free up a significant amount as well.
So what about RVs? Are you guys pushing on that? Because that's what we've been, our conversation has been with the governor. We have a large group of people that don't want to go to the navigation center. You know the story, or Bethlehem Inn. They want their RV with their things. And is there any way that she's going to change her mind on allowing that to help with funding?
So again, I think if we meet our original goals that we are required to meet, and I have every reason to believe that we will. We just signed the contract today for the 75 units with the Old Mill Inn and Suites, and that will be utilized for rapid rehousing. And so that is an example of the governor's office allowing us to be unique to complement the needs that we have in our community. And I mean community by region. And so there could be the possibility, Commissioner, that that is a yes. But again, when we get to the defined ask, that's when we go to the governor's office and ask for some guidance, some input, and some recognition of the nuances and challenges that we have.
Great. Oh, no, that's really good news. That, if you can meet all those variables, then we can go on and go down to the RVs as we see it. Now, there's a lot of them out there, and it would be nice to be able to get those houseless people at least help with where they feel their personal life possessions are with them and their pets. So I know that's incredibly important to an enormous number of people that are in Deschutes County at this time.
So just so I'm trying to walk this through here. Seems like the first step is have the conversation behind the scenes about, funding, what land's available, who's in, who's out of this discussion. Then the elected and the land managers meet, sort of amplify the issue, talk about that, this is a priority problem for all of us. We want to find solutions, start wading through some of the opportunities. And then it seems like the next step would be, once we have, sort of a little bit of a path forward, then we bring in, the service providers and public health officials and say like, who can do this, right? Before we get too far along in this, and then what kind of ask do we need to make from the governor's office and other asks? Is that, okay.
And that sounds exactly right. And one addition to that is there is this like established group that some folks in the room have been participating for a while. I'm a little new to the group, but this like COVID-19 executive preparedness meeting. And so a subset of that group, because it's a really broad invitation, talked about this 2 Fridays ago and decided that there's a desire to meet more regularly every other week and have those Friday meetings. And so there's potential that once we have the big round table, if we want to have like a regular cadence with public lands folks, with providers, however, that's already kind of reserved on people's calendars, some of those key players. And so we'd be able to use that if the board would like to. And if the board doesn't want to, it might still meet, but it would be not related to this, just other strategizing.
So it's 1 on Fridays.
Yeah, it's 1 to 2 every other Friday, starting tomorrow.
And our immediate homework is to get back to you about the doodle poll.
Yes.
Thank you.
And you're not in a huge rush because I leave for vacation today, so I won't be able to touch it until next Wednesday,
Okay.
but.
Yes.
And I'm gonna just piggyback on what Commissioner Perkins said, just the alignment of goals, sitting down with what you come out of the meeting on Friday and roles and responsibilities at all levels, of whether it's the localities, the service providers, state, county, and let's, define that in each of these projects, so it's much more clear.
And all our interactions, or at least all my interactions with that group so far, folks have expressed the exact same desire. ODOT, Forest Service, those folks, I think everybody wants to be on the same page, so.
Excellent.
So we're actually doing some coordinating.
Okay.
It rocks.
Yes, making progress. Mark, did you want to add anything to the comments since you're here today?
The only thing I would add, Commissioner, is that as a representative of the agency, I've seen that we have sought for quite a while now to work at this in a multilateral way, to be involved in the conversation. As far as myself right here, I am here out of respect, gratitude, and appreciation for the Deschutes County Sheriff Office's support in our area out off of Forest Road 18, also known as China Hat Road. And just to listen in. I'm not here I haven't prepared with it. I just, in law enforcement, I want to present facts.
Right.
And not. So I don't have hard numbers on, like earlier alluding to the fire starts. It's not been my experience this year that the fires have been coming out of camps predominantly, but I don't have those numbers, so I'm really not prepared to speak specifically to it. Thank you.
Okay. Well, it's amazing. The other day when the fire started, I got a text from one person and the next 5 minutes later, Holly Juke sent me a text. So it's really nice to know that, you know, hearing from people that are, and the, you know, the capability to put it out as quickly as they did was really reassuring, because that whole community has been dealing with a lot of threatening situations for quite a while. So they're really, you know, I know people that when they leave town, they have a box of their favorite things they take somewhere else in case their house burns down. So, and we know how that, you know, when you see what happened elsewhere, you know, how that's just kind of a challenging way to have to live your life, to be worried about it. But I really appreciate you being here, and thank you for saying those kind words about complimenting our sheriff's office.
No, absolutely. We've had outstanding relationships for decades. It's my hope and vision to that will just grow stronger. Thank you.
Yeah, oh, that's great. Thank you so much. Are there any other comments? Do we think we're pretty good then with the public agency, the roundtable? Okay, Nick.
Sure, I'll just offer, just because it's planning and it's important to everything we're doing, I'll just give you a status report on our budget.
Sure.
Just very briefly, I checked this morning with our chief financial officer, and of the $1 million we had allocated, we have remaining $815,999.24. And we're spending approximately $12,000 per month for staffing and internal service funds. So just want to give you a snapshot of where we're at with the budget for our collective efforts.
Okay, 8:15, what was it?
815,990 and 24
4 cents. Okay, I remember the 24. Okay, great. So we're actually, we've got some funding in that.
We do.
That's nice to know, Chris, isn't it?
It's great to know.
I know, you can afford to go on vacation then. Because are you still working 50-50 then?
I am, yeah, and I was gonna ask, do you know, so, yeah, we'd submitted a bill to
Oh.
CYC, and I wasn't sure if that number had been included in that 815, like if the reimbursement had been paid or not yet.
Good question. It may not have been. I haven't.
Okay.
So
I can
mine is
follow up
Chris's
with our
latest
CFO.
pay.
It would be plus, actually, CYC would be paying the county.
Oh, very
So
good.
it would be, I think, maybe potentially plus like 10 or 15,000.
Okay.
Even better, thank you.
I'm not surprised by that. I'll ask our CFO.
Okay. Are we, okay, thank you for that. That's good to know that we are still in the black. Excellent. Officer Karpstein, I believe you have the floor now. If you want to just identify what you've been doing, and thank you for coming today on your day off.
You're welcome.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, got in uniform on my day off.
That does not
I
look good.
never can wait to take this thing off, man. So Deputy Karpstein with the Sheriff's Office. Again, I am a school resource officer at 4 schools here, 3 Rivers, Buckingham, Tumalo, and Terrebonne. I was assigned to the China Hat Road area probably since, I want to say June, maybe end of June. And I've been working with the Forest Service. They've been great and helping me, because as a law enforcement officer out on China Hat Road and dirt road is very dangerous. So it's nice to have cover units available because sometimes our patrol guys are tied up on other calls in the county. So my cover could be miles and minutes away. You know, I've talked to some people about this, and from the mental health and behavioral health, and you know, we were talking about like how dangerous it is, and they're like, you know, it's not too bad, but they're, you know, when you're driving out there with the Subaru Outback and you're delivering on water and you're giving them supplies, it's probably not as dangerous with a guy that's out enforcing the law out there. And so, you know, I deal with a lot of people that do not want me out there, period. Whether they're flipping me off, whether they're yelling at me, whether they're telling, I had one guy telling me he'd shoot me, so forth. I mean, just, it's on and on and on. There is a lot of homeless people out there that I have gotten along with and have gotten support because they even tell me how dangerous it is out there. And so the boundary road, we call it, there's a few campers there that they don't necessarily, they want to continue to be houseless and move somewhere else because they keep getting broken into. Somebody said that they tried to get their tent set on fire from one of their exes. And so it's just a constant battle between these houseless people out there. It's like, you know, the own little community, and they're dealing with things that we deal with in Deschutes River Woods. It's just at the extent that it's out on China Hat Road. And they not all get along. I can tell you that. But my main focus was not necessarily to answer up to patrol calls. I mean, I will. But my main focus was to drive those roads and try and make sure that we are suppressing fires before they get big. Looking at campfires, I can't enforce a campfire. Forest Service can, I can't. Only time I can enforce it is if it leaves that fire ring. And then I could be looking at like a reckless burn where I could use the Forest Service possibility as the victim, because you have to have a victim for a reckless burn. So once it's in the fire pit, I can tell them to put it out, but I have no lawful duty to, they don't have to right in front of me unless I take a photo of it and I send it to Forest Service. I have stopped probably now close to 7 or 8 fires within the fire ring. The Forest Service is great. I had a meeting with them. When was that? That's like a week ago, probably. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, and they provided me with these, and I think we should all carry them as deputies. But they provided us with these little cans. It's like it's just a spray bottle. It looks like for like glass cleaner, but it's a fire extinguisher, and it extinguishes the fires immediately. They provided me with like probably, I don't know, close to 30 of those, and I actually went around and I handed them out to all the camps. The problem when I was doing that, what I was feeling is like, yeah, go ahead and have your fire in your fire pit and just use the fire extinguisher. I just didn't feel good about handing it out. But at the same time, I'd rather them have something that's going to suppress the fire if they choose to have one, or if they have a barbecue that catches on fire or something, to that extent. So, but I handed out, and most of them were very grateful. A lot of them told me to get out of their camp. But I did hand them a lot. I actually kept one for myself. But our calls for service, they're not necessarily going down since I've been out there. I'm responding to, yesterday we had domestic, or gal got beat up pretty good, and boyfriend left on foot, and trying to find somebody in the forest is nearly, it's a needle in a haystack. But we're going to now continue to look for him. That same day, the boundary road on the right is kind of private. That's where Lost Tracks is. And there's a homeowner that's trying to sell a house right there. They're not supposed to be camping on that side of the road, the south side of the camp, because it's Forest Service. I've kicked probably, I don't know, close to 6, 7, 8 people out of there. And they've been cooperative and compliant. And I just say, hey, can you please just move to the other side? They're great. But most of the people, most of the people that are moving there, in fact, actually 100% of the ones that are moving onto that, because they don't know the area and they don't know it's private really, they're from out of the area. So like the guy I arrested yesterday on 2 outstanding warrants out of Marion County had just got there that day. Him and most of the people I am talking to that are, because I'm seeing a lot of camps pop up lately out there. And I think I talked to Patty about it. Is it Congressman Vince?
Yes, Congressman Vince.
And there, a lot of them, there's this nomad site, and it is what I'm hearing. And I learned about it because a kid, he's probably in his 20s, moved from Kentucky here, and he had found out about it. he goes by the name Stephanie, and he, I think is now in Sisters, but he had learned about this site. And I've been meaning to try and get in contact with him to get the site name, but basically it's for homeless people from around the country can go to this website and they can bring their RVs from state to state. And if they break down on the side of the road, run out of gas, they can get on this Nomad website and they will get assistance to get them to China Hat Road. China Hat Road's pretty well known now around. I had a guy that just moved from Fresno. I heard about it. I told him it's super dangerous because he camped right in front of the Smurf camp. And
You might want to explain this.
I'll get to the Smurf camp here in a second. But I explained to him, I'm like, you don't want to be here. And he was kind of an elder gentleman, and I was worried that he might get taken advantage of. I don't know where he went, but he was gone the next day. I was the one that I can't get into a whole lot of details, but I was the one that made the traffic stop on China Hat Road. You guys might have heard about in the news where we got lots of fentanyl pills. Lots.
That's where I saw that plate this morning.
That's the same car, yeah. I mean, I got photos of it. I mean, hundreds and hundreds of fentanyl pill bags of fentanyl powder, which is extremely dangerous, and cocaine, which kind of shocks us because when we think of houselessness, cocaine, we think, I mean, that's a pretty wealthy drug. So, I think more white collar type drugs, but I guess cocaine's coming back. Yeah. So, so that was a great traffic stop. So the Smurf camp is right off the Boundary Road. And instead of staying on the Boundary Road, I showed Commissioner where it was, and it's just to your left, and it's just this huge encampment, or it was, and they call that the Smurf camp, and I learned it's because the blue pills. So fentanyl is identified if the street name is a blue pill, and they're sold in what they call boats. So 1,000 pills is a boat. So they call it the Smurf camp because of the blue pills. Well, the guy that I stopped the other night, he's currently, I think, still in. Harley? He's still in. I think he's going away for a while because of commercial quantities, but anyhow, he was Papa Smurf. So that next day after that traffic stop, I went back out there. Those two camps where he was camping, he was in a tent, the two trailers he was associated with in his car were gone. Well, I talked to one of the campers, and I think he just moved further back out. They don't know where, but they're back out in China Hat, located their camp again. But I was supposed to look at like the sewage and last week. I don't even like saying this, but I was in the camp and I stepped in some human feces. I had to go. I didn't notice it until I got in my patrol car and smelt it. Had to drive to the shop, spray my boots off. I know that other deputies have complained about that. Just human feces. I don't know where they're dumping it. I'm guessing on the ground because when I'm in these camps, you can smell the human waste and the urine, and none of those trailers or campers in the last 2 months have moved. And so I guarantee you they're probably not driving into town and dumping their trailers. I don't know where it's going. I walk around it. I haven't found any. I don't know if Ditzel has where it's just dripping into it. They probably have it capped off. I'm not sure.
One had a bucket today. Buckets, like 10 buckets.
So I can show you where it is. Yeah, and so and then I'm dealing with the state laws, and so it's domestics. We had a horrible child sex abuse case right there off China Hat. I don't know where that case is at, nor could I even disclose what's going on with that case with these two children and an uncle. Horrible case right there. Domestic violences, shooting complaints. I looked on our shooting map. They can shoot there. Unfortunately, it's right across the street from Woodside Ranch houses, and they have to hear that. And by the time I get there, I don't know what camp it came from. And they aren't going to tell me the truth. They're not going to say, yeah, I'm the one shooting. And so there's gunshots happening all the time. I go into shooting complaints all the time. Thefts, a lot of the homelessness want to report theft on theft of homelessness on homelessness, Berg on Berg. Wood cutting. The thinning of the forests in the last 2 months. I showed a Forest Service unit. They basically got a sawmill going out there. I stopped the guy. He had a load of firewood. He didn't have it permitted. I cited him for, he's also misdemeanor drive with no insurance, no registration. He's criminally suspended. I could have took him to jail, but there's no bail, so he'd just walk out and be right back out. So I cited him, gave him his court appearance. I ended up finding out where his camp is. I mean, he's got piles of big logs, wood. You can see where the saws have been ran. I mean, he's got his own little setup going there.
They're cutting down big live ponderosa pine. And so blatant, they're dropping them in their camp.
Yeah. And yeah, and if you drive out even further out, that's where they're doing most of the wood cutting when they get further out. You know, a lot of them are cutting into trees and then obviously the tree's just gonna die. Spray painting all over. They have the painted tree, they call it, turn right at the painted tree. You'll see it if you drive out China Hat Road, about milepost 2.5, almost 3. But I am seeing more and more camps popping up lately, and almost every person I talk to, they're coming from out of state or out of town. One guy just came from the coast. He doesn't like it here because people aren't treating him right, so he might move back to the coast. Name it. I mean,
Well, in February, when I had my tour with 2 deputies, there was, in one of my photographs, there were 7 trees, big trees that were cut to the ground.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So most of the people that I'm talking to, I'm starting to interview in different ways. I'm asking them, where are you from? Why are you here? What brought you here? The out of state ones measure 110.
100%.
100%. It's on their website. They won't be arrested for drugs. So we're educating them. So you're bringing them into Oregon, and then they're bringing them here because they said the benefits. I'm like, well, why won't you be? I talked to a guy the other day from Eugene, and I asked him why he's here. He said he doesn't like the rain. I'm like, you know, it snows here and it'll kill you. Rain won't. And he goes, yeah, I might move back, but honestly, he goes, Eugene's tapped out. Those were his words. We were taking people into Juniper for getting ready for the contractors. And we went into the camp, which is called the Fishbowl, where the guy was attacked and killed by the dogs. They still have several big pit bull mastiff mix that were barking at us while Jennifer and Christy were posting signs. One guy came up on us out with a machete. He saw our vehicles, still maintained guarding his camp with a machete. He just didn't advance at us. So we were actually guns out while they were doing that. They have, in my experience, they have no regard for law enforcement right now. I'm not saying all of them, but the ones I'm talking to said they won't go to a managed camp. You'll have to kill them to get them out of there. This is public land. This is their property. That they think they squatted for a certain amount of time. Like Casey said, walking into these camps, there's a 3-acre camp in Dirt World right now that's got probably over 1,000, 1,200 tires alone. It probably has 24 trailers. So that the amount of human waste, they have so many cars out there that are just stripped and left out there. It's turning into a dump ground.
I would say that I've seen a ton of camps that are just abandoned out there, just trash.
We're talking about China Hat.
China Hat. I don't spend a lot of time there. I've got so much work on China Hat. I'm supposed to be, my captain said, I want you there 75% of the time at China Hat. I want you 25% at Dirt Road. Okay. It's really hard to leave China Hat. It's hard to get out to Dirt Road when I'm so busy, and it's just one deputy with, you say, well, how many did you say, 250 people out there?
Right, that's what.
Yeah, the one deputy. I mean, typically it's one deputy to thousands of people, it's kind of the ratio they do it for the, for the county. And so, but yeah, I just piggyback off him a lot. I'd say probably 90% of them that I've talked to, even in Dirt Road, they would not go to a managed camp because, one, they don't know if they're going to allow a dog. And these people's, their dog to them is their children. Like, they are not giving up their dog. One guy had a bed and was going to get into treatment, but they said, you can't bring your dog, and he refused. So but it's a big percentage that are not gonna leave.
Well, the good news is though, that Veterans Village does look at dogs on a dog to dog basis.
Mhm.
And, that program has actually been incredibly successful. And the county just funded 7 more cabins for that camp, and those are gonna be available in November.
Is there a tiny house place? Cause Laura,
It's-
a homeless gal that I've been talking to quite a bit out there, she just got out of there and she moved into a tiny home in Bend or something called.
They're Oregon villages.
Right.
Oh, okay,
I know Laura.
she was super excited.
Yeah.
She's out there with another guy, he goes by the name of Rev, who's trying to get in to another house. Those are, honestly, I think those are the only 2 that I've talked to that are really serious about wanting to get out of there. And I've
Can I
talked to a
like
lot.
push back a little bit on that, just because, I think, one, you're a law enforcement presence, but also like, you're saying unmanaged camp, like, they don't, if you don't, if it's not like, we have something for you that is this, and this, I don't know why anyone would say I wanna go there. If you don't know what it is, why would you wanna go there, right? And so I think, I just wanna push back a little bit on that, because I'm sure the number is not anywhere near 100%, but I'm sure there are a lot of people who would love to be able to park their RV somewhere safe, or, have access to services, because that's my.
They all want access to services.
Yeah.
If it's low barrier, you might want to check into our stats, our calls for service when we use juvenile for a night shelter. Because that was low barrier. And our calls for service there were 6, 7 calls a night. Because people were not, the drugs, the weapons, they weren't screened. And if you do that in a camp,
Well,
and put
I
them
think
all
we have
together, you're gonna
examples of that not being the case with a lot of our low barrier shelters.
So Casey, is the sheriff gonna replace you then?
I don't know, I'm done next week.
You're
Are you
next
going
week.
out? I go
Part
back
of
to
it.
the schools,
Like vacation.
yeah, I'm back to the schools. I'll leave it at that.
After next week then?
Yeah.
And then, Deputy Blaylock, you're gonna be out there?
Yeah, I'll be out there.
Okay.
I will say though, I have not seen any new fire pits with my presence out there in the last couple of weeks, so I don't know if that works. I don't know. They know my schedule. Most of them say they know my routine. So they're yeah.
So they pay attention.
They pay attention to what I do and when my days off are, they know. Yep, hey, you were on your days off. Is this your Monday? Yep. They know. So, and it's just me, because patrol is tied up responding to a lot of other calls because we're so short.
I'm just gonna walk this back. So you feel that even if we came up with lightly managed opportunities for them to have access to minimal services, trash, sewer, water, kind of facilities like that, it wouldn't be beneficial and they wouldn't find that a reason to move.
Some will.
Some will. I mean, you gotta understand, some of these camps, it's gonna take weeks to clean up. I mean, there's a camp right now that needs to have a bulldozer to come in and
I've
then-
seen that.
I mean, when I first went out there, I asked every person I talked to, I'm out here for fires and you need to clean up your camps, period. Or I'm gonna start citing for offensive littering. And so when I did that, their camps did start getting cleaned up a lot, but then they're just dumping it and they're asking me for, what are those yellow trash bags? I'm like, no, I don't have those. So I don't know if that would help. I mean, it would definitely probably help some and it would clean it up a little bit. A lot of them are abandoned. I mean, you're talking, there's a lot of cars out there that are just sitting there that have been already ran through and abandoned camps like Ed Bear's camp. I haven't seen anyone there since the first week I was out there.
There's a lot
Because
of
he was
them.
wanted, the SWAT team got called out to his camp. He's bounced, he went somewhere else. So.
And I realize we see things through a different set of eyes. We do, we know that.
We do.
But
Well,
the
that's why
thing
Stacy's
is,
here too.
the thing is, there's dangerous, it's dangerous out there.
Yeah.
My wife doesn't like us going out there.
Uh.
Either you could step on things. I mean, it's no different than being,
We
I
do
worked
have,
TriMed in Portland, and it was the same thing, just not as concentrated. So just be careful when you build a camp, because some of these trailers, they're definitely not gonna make code.
Yeah.
Motorhome, they put wood stoves in them and then they're burning down.
Well, I
So
remember Juniper, that they actually had like wooden chalets built, and then they have chimneys coming out of them, where they've taken wood and built structures.
they are, and then they're starting on fire if they
Yeah.
don't do the right things and stuff. I talked to a lady yesterday, I felt so bad for her, so thick in smoke. I asked her, could I take you anywhere, get you out of here? And she said no. And she was very nice, you know, the one way I told you.
I worked, yeah,
But she was hitting an inhaler at the same time, so I asked her, can I take you out of here? And she thanked me and said, no, she didn't have anywhere else to go. And I said, well, I'd take you anywhere. And she said, no, I've been out here. I asked her if she would go to a camp and she said no.
they do get upset too if I stay too long at their camp. So they think that everyone's watching, they're now a snitch, and it's very dangerous for me to stop too long. So if I stop at a camp, they're say, hey, you need to move along, you've been here a little too long. I hear that a lot. So, you know, I was
They're in
asked,
their home, right? I mean, it's
Yeah.
the same idea. Think about it.
so. They,
If Jennifer and Christy were out there the other day by themselves, and that guy was out there with the dogs, then we're not there, so it's kind of a
Yeah.
double.
I have dealt
Yeah,
with
for sure.
Katie and Tiny, I think, they've been great. They're awesome to work with. They let me know a lot of information on what people are. You know, because a lot of them do have warrants and we do pull the warrant list. I'm actively looking for a couple right now. But you know, some of the things I got approached by two. The other day I was sitting in my car and it was night and they kind of snuck up behind. I didn't see them when I was parked and they knocked on the window, just scared the crud out of me. And so, but they wanted, you know, hey, can you give us, you guys need to give us some flashlights. I'm like, I have a flashlight. This is one of my tools that I use. I don't have a flashlight. Well, we all need flashlights. It's dangerous out here. We can't see when we're walking on China Hat Road. It's dangerous because there's cars going back and forth. So, but yeah.
Hear from Stacy
Yeah.
too.
Oh,
Right,
absolutely. My name is
Stacy, do you want to
Stacy
introduce yourself? Yes,
And I'm
thank you so
from
much.
Reach. Thank you so much for, because it's very difficult and challenging out there. I've been going out to Dirt World and kind of have for the past 7 or 8 years. Because of the trust I built, probably not the safest, but I do go out on my own. Because of the growth of the camps, we are now tending to find 3 locations at Dirt World where we meet folks. So we actually set up a time, they pass the word around, and then we can meet people. The other reality is I don't send my staff out, I go out and my car was getting so beaten up, you know, as you go like 20 miles into China Hat. But I've known most of the folks out there for the last 7 or 8 years. I think when we look at this is a spectrum of any type of population, right? Whether you're housed or unhoused, we've got those that are just creating major havoc and trash. And then we have another group of folks out there that are working. We bring so many work clothes and gas to get to work, and people show us their verification that they're working, both at Dirt World and China Hat. I've been asking people, what does an authorized camp look like? What does a safe camping environment look like? There is a population that I absolutely agree are not going to take advantage of it. I know all the folks that you're talking about. He greets me with his machete and now puts it back, you know, in his tent or sheath as we meet. But I'm not law enforcement. You know, I'm that person that's coming out, that's helping you get your ID, that's helping you get your birth certificate, that might be bringing you water or diapers for your children out there. I'd like to offer to the Forestry Department and the Sheriff's Department what we do for Ben. Ben Fire calls us and says, hey, we've got someone burning an unlawful fire in a trailer. We then go out and deliver what the Ben Fire has deemed safe in terms of heaters and stoves. It still makes me nervous that people are using propane stoves, but we do instruction on how those hoses work. I think it's a better fix. So we do a lot of things. We also are operating 3 safe parking locations in Bend. You do need to do a background check for any sexual offenses to get in, and there is guidelines.
So it is lower barrier, but not no barrier. We've been doing this for 3.5 years and it has been very successful. I think one of the keys, it really concerns me when we talk about taking 500 people and putting them on one site. I think that a scattered site is probably a better, more productive way to move forward with this, because we have our older adults that are out there, they're medically fragile, are not going to be wanting to be out in an environment where we've got a lot of drug use going on or parties going on. So I think we have to kind of look at this. The one thing that just screams to me every time we have this conversation is there is no doubt everyone's perception of the problem out there is real. But how do we go to that deeper of what do we do to remove those barriers? Why are people in these traumatic situations? People are so traumatized. They trust, they don't trust, they get paranoia, substance use disorders. Not everybody, but we need to get more infrastructure to address substance use disorders, mental health. We have folks out there that are not able or capable of making a decision, and they're falling through the cracks because they're not going to get to behavioral health. They're not going to stay on their meds. So we've got that population. We have another population that I see popping up that do want to engage outside, that want to be housed outside. And I think that in working with them, it has to be some guidelines, but it doesn't need to be, taking dogs away. But there's got to be some buy-in. And we're seeing some of these little groups that are being successful and need some some guidance, I would say, and some support with that. But I think it's also our approach in how we do this. Folks have been out there a year to 20 years. I just met someone, and they are calling the shots. They have had to answer to no one. So I think how we present this, and I think that's where Katie and Colleen and Tiny and their team and other service providers like Kobo and us that are out there, boots on the ground, can help to navigate this with folks, keeping in mind there's going to be that group that's not going to engage in that way. What we're also seeing is the numbers increasing because once Hunnell and Clausen closed, we have now moved people. It's kind of like a bad game of whack-a-mole. We've moved them out to Dirt World, we've moved China Hat. I am getting called to streets all over Bend and in Deschutes County, where we have people popping up that because of the camping code, they're moving, constantly moving, and many of their vehicles don't move. So we have to try to figure out, how do we set some things up so people can get some stability, have some safe infrastructure. And I think that's where the service providers can work closely with other entities to provide this. And my family, my husband met someone from the sheriff's department at a dog park. And when this sheriff found out that I go out to these areas alone, oh my gosh, he gave my husband an earful. But I have built a different relationship. And so I see all the harm and I see the danger. The gentleman that was mauled by the dogs, I was actually his emergency contact. So I was contacted about his death first. And it does concern me because we have kiddos out there. So we also work with CPS where we won't share too much information, but they can call us and say, we have a trailer out here that's unfit for children. So we can make sure that we go out and bring tents and help them set their things up, clothes out of the trailer so the kids can be safe in their surroundings in there, and also bringing out ties and tethers for the dogs. Because that's another huge danger that's out there. But in a snapshot, I think working on shelter beds is critical, both for our higher barrier and lower barrier, increasing our safe parking capacity. I have found a sweet spot, so anywhere from about 4 to 12 vehicles are really a great option for safe parking.
So at those three the three safe parking spots,
Yes.
what is your range then at those?
Right now, unfortunately, it's 2 to 5. So one location has 2 spots, one has 3, and one has 5.
Okay, but you're saying 4 to 12 really does work,
I
okay?
think so. And of course we can flex with that. I think if you put 20 parked vehicles, we need places, people are not dumping their sewage. You are absolutely right. What they're doing often is waiting until no one's around, because I too have had to have the biohazard team spray me down, and I keep other clothes in my car because you will get human waste, knee high at times, but as they're draining things. So that's an important factor, but they can't move their vehicles. We've tried to get some of the companies to come out. We've offered to pay for them to drain And they often won't go out to China Hat or Dirt World because of it's on, forest land or BLM or the danger factor. So I think the other thing is we know that we need to, this region's very unique. I came from the Seattle area doing this work, and most people, if you handed them a key, they'd run to their housing. People here, I think, are in many different groups. Some will go to shelters, some want housing, and there's a large population that wants to stay outside. So how do we set up infrastructure for that to work for our unhoused community, law enforcement, and our housed community and businesses? Because it's not fair for the housed community or businesses to have people defecating in the front of their businesses or walking around finding syringes. So we need to kind of really look at our region in particular and what infrastructures we need to have.
Stacy, thank you so much. Is the safe parking that you're referring to, is that at St. Church's sign?
Yes, we don't advertise a lot publicly, but because we are really tight about having, you cannot just pull your car in there. So we're out there. So we currently are at the Unitarian Church, at Antioch Church, and at Nativity Lutheran. They are all in close proximity to children. So that's why we cannot have anyone with a sexual offense. And then we communicate closely with the preschools, the high school. These are all within Bend, and so we do communicate with Bend PD. And they, right now, if you're on that safe parking spot and you're not registered or licensed, no one will bother you. That's one of our case management goals, is if you're gonna have the privilege of having a vehicle, let's work on getting you legal on it. The minute people drive off and we tell them, you are beholden to the laws of the road. And so we work closely. We also are making sure that people are VI SPDATed, which is an assessment to get onto our coordinated entry list for housing. And you need to work with your case manager to come up with a housing plan. And that's just not like, oh, I want to go into housing. That is actually doing the applications, or I want to go into, we have an 80-year-old woman right now. She doesn't want to go into housing. She wants to go into an RV park. So we have her on a list for an RV park. And someone else is on a list for assisted living, an older gentleman that is battling a lot of medical conditions.
So do those turn over like every 90 days? Do you
I
have?
wish.
No, I mean, because I know that's how Rick Russell has set up their program, that they
We
really.
originally did that. So we were the ones that operated up at Mountain View originally, but to get to Redmond, and so Rick grew the program. Right now, the challenge is, when we came up with this idea of the program 3.5–4 years ago, our vision was 90 days and then you transition into housing. Problem is, you stay 90 days and housing takes 2 to 5 years. What are we gonna, so we don't just send people back out onto the street. If you are following the guidelines, if you are creating plans, a lady and her husband and 2 children have been with us for 9 months. They are moving Sunday, found housing. And so we can help with deposits, we can help with application fees. And then another gentleman, we just appealed his denial for housing, and he just got approved, so he'll be moving in the next 2 weeks. And it's painful and it's wonderful. It's painful because it's one person at a time. And it's wonderful because it's one person at a time and we're seeing successes. But how do we grow these models?
Right, I talked to Mayor Keebler about it a long time ago, because I know that it's incredibly successful, and I think your numbers were really good.
Yes.
And if we could just do a bit more of it in our
Yes.
community, because I love your model. And I think
We met yesterday to talk about that, and I just want to preface, we could not do this work. This is not like Reach is doing amazing work. What we are doing is partnering with the sheriffs, with the police, with the fire, with, Mosaic Medical, Neighbor Impact, and DCBH, and COVO, and all the entities, and I think that's what makes us stronger. Because if we have a mental health crisis, we know that our ability is to a certain point to de-escalate. I'm well trained in that. Then we want to make sure we're bringing in the professionals as well. And that's where a lot of collaboration and communication comes in.
Well, thank you so much for sharing today, and all the best to actually expand what you're doing, because I walked door to door in Redmond last October because we were expanding county property in Redmond for safe parking. And, I hear from one of the neighbors a lot when somebody drives by down the street too fast, but that's okay.
Right.
It's actually, I believe it's working. So do you do the generators and everything there?
Yeah, we actually have a congregation member that offered to do solar. So we don't do generators because of the neighbors who are
Right.
concerned. So we're doing solar, and then we have electrical, and then access to water, porta potty. that kind of thing. It's pretty, it's pretty bare, but it's working. When we first started this nonprofit, we were engaging about 100 times a month. We're probably about 550 to 600 engagements a month right now. That's not unduplicated. And there's two and a half of us that are doing this, our team. And then we do a lot of support at the motels and at Shepherd's House, things like that. We are getting calls about bus tickets out of Bend. We are not in the practice of sending someone out of Bend to send them houseless somewhere else. So we vet that. We want to make sure you have a plan. Have we actually called and contacted with your vet or your family member? And then we also do, we contact parole and probation also because we want to make sure someone's not on paper. Because when I first started this very naive 18 years ago, I, in my good heart, sent someone out of the area that was wanted by the FBI. So that was a really good lesson that we need to make sure that people are not, on paper. And so those are hard conversations that we have with folks too. And DOT contacts us to come out and help facilitate exits from land. Yes,
Great.
yes, thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for that. Thank you for all sides of the issue. This is outstanding. Are there any questions for anyone today?
Thank you for
Yeah,
all the
thank
work
you.
that you're all
Yeah.
doing.
For what you're
This
doing.
is hard work.
Lot for.
And I'm sure it
small
weighs
staff.
on you.
It's on you guys too.
Yeah.
A lot.
Great. Oh, good. Well, that's nice about the solar.
Yes, it's wonderful.
That's good. Okay, we do now have, I believe we have public comments. It's a couple minutes early, but we could go ahead with any public comments. Are there any comments in the room? Oh, Commissioner DeBonne.
I just happen to be back again. So recently I received an email in my inbox. Has anybody heard of Kevin Dahlgren? So I was introduced to him a couple weeks ago, talked to him, in fact, did a public lands cleanup with him this last Saturday. But I received kind of officially a report from him. So I'm gonna just hand out, this is a contract and the report itself. I've got about 8 copies, so I'll make sure everybody down this way gets one. And so, as I say, I am just piecing together what was even going on here. So, I guess I have a timeline right here, so. I was introduced to Kevin a couple weeks ago. Contract was signed on July 12th and 13th. Just before, about that time, somebody said, "Oh, did you hear about Kevin Dahlgren?" And I was like, I didn't even know what we're talking about. I was emailed this report as the chair of the county commission on August 8th, so last week, I guess. And when I saw it, and it was in a Macintosh document, I couldn't even open up here at the office, so it was just kind of funny, but I didn't know what it was. So I just want everybody to understand this. Since then, I talked to Kevin Dahlgren. In fact, we went down the public lands cleanup Saturday down in La Pine area. He heard about it when I was talking to him last week. He said, "Oh, I'll come to that." So we spent a couple hours together on Saturday, in fact. This is where I'm, unveiling a report. Yeah, I guess is kind of what's happening here. But as the sheriff contracted with Kevin, and in the contract it said email the chair of the county commission. And I think the concept is, I can send a couple more. I just got 2 more. Concept is that it could have private information. They don't want to be seen as a public service or a public safety agency making assumptions about people they're talking to. So the sheriff contracted, sent Kevin in, and this is a report. So I'm just sharing with what's going on here. We can digest it. I'm just letting you know, I'm just bringing it to this body. Commissioner Chang, he can be notified too. As I say, it was in my inbox just this last week, and I saw the contract today for the first time. So that's really what put it in perspective for me. So I knew that this would be the place for this to be able to share it. So don't need to take it anywhere else right now unless there's any questions.
I had an opportunity to speak with this gentleman for about 30 minutes, and he's a straight shooter, but he is probably one of the most educated persons I've talked to on homelessness. Said he'd been doing it like 30 years, came from Portland and all sorts of stuff. And he's worth talking to.
Yeah, so it's a point of view, and everything's up for discussion these days, but this is a report that was provided to me by the efforts of the sheriff.
Interesting.
Thank you very much.
Something for your nightly reading?
But, and, yeah, I mean, I can provide it electronically too, as to say this
Yeah.
was a printout that got copied, so it already created.
Okay, great, because some other people in the room might want to get that, and we need to get it one into the record. So do you have it?
I just shared it, but I will make sure that I leave with that and it goes into the record.
Okay, yeah. we need to
There's
get
a color, nice copy Nick has now,
Okay.
it was in your inbox.
Well, I think one of Kevin's comments is we need to empower people and not enable them. So I believe in that, and you know, Stacy, what you're doing, I really appreciate your passion and what you're doing, and you know, there's a lot of people out there that maybe some of them don't want the help, but some of them clearly can need the help, and I'm just hoping that we can get more people through our Veterans Village. Now that we, in what, a couple months, we'll be adding 7 more cabins. The program there seems to be really, we've had 15 veterans already move on to housing.
It's a wonderful model.
Yes,
It really is.
thank you Clackamas County for sharing their model with us, September of 2020. So we saw it and we, you know, we're really, it's good. So this is great. Any other public comments? Are there any raised hands? Okay, yes.
Hi, my name is Kevin Hopper, one of the founders of Public Land Stewards. Commissioner Bone, as you mentioned, to our last cleanup, Animal Pine, we've been cleaning up the China Hat area for the
Could you
last 8+
speak up,
years.
sir? I can't hardly.
I apologize. Our group has been cleaning up China Hat region the last 8+ years. We started as a 4-wheel drive club, and through necessity, got a fiscal sponsor to become a nonprofit locally. Hearing the sheriff, the Forest Service, Stacy, and a lot of the commentary here, we tend to kind of ride all of those waves. I'm a former mental health professional. I was a secure transport officer here in town. And I definitely look at a lot of our crisis that everyone's discussing here greatly as a mental health crisis. People don't enter the lands with mental health issues. Quite often, it does turn to that. Safety on a regular. Most of my crew are concealed carry holders. Our safety is a big thing. Mental health out there, it's a big component of what's going on. Happy to hear and see everyone involved here, the time and commitment. Glad to hear Kevin Dahlgren involved with his perspective. There is no one path in homelessness, and there's no one path out. Spectrum is a 3-dimensional concept here. I think it's going to take a lot of different ideas and a lot of different solutions to addressing all which Central Oregon is experiencing. And I know that myself, my crew, are definitely ready to be a part of it. And want to be at the table, at least be listening as to what's going on, because it affects simply the cleanups we do. It's a lot more than just cleaning up the forest. It's something that we're very passionate about and don't want to be doing forever.
So what was the name of your group again? It's, I'm assuming it's a 501c3?
We are fiscally sponsored by Discover Your Forest.
Okay.
Public Land Stewards, PLSN.org. I have enough stickers for everybody. But just appreciative of everyone coming together to work together, because it's what's needed.
And you've been doing this for 8 years.
Central Oregon Land Cruisers started cleanups out there. Started with a teenager in a club. They ran over trash one day and decided that they needed to do something more about it. All the adults said, sure, we'll do a cleanup.
Oh, thank you.
So this year we've pulled over 300,000 pounds of trash and cars off Giant Hat alone. Saturday was somewhere between 30 and 50,000 pounds out of the pine. Barely scratched the surface down there. We are seeing some change out of China Hat. front area that was cleaned that hold 96,000 pounds of trash in 4 hours on a Saturday, 110,000 pounds of cars the day before. While that area has been rehabited, you have to look at the positives here. You have to look up to see it, but a lot of people who have rehabilitated that front area directly in front of the golf course starting to make piles now, bag trash. And that to me is somewhere moving forward. People actually bagging and coming into encampments, cleaning up other people's stuff. They just don't have the means to get it out of there. Those little changes are huge. There's a lot of trash out on a public lands, and I don't think it helps anyone who's living out there's conditions. Stepping out of your trailer, or your tent, into what is kind of a landfill doesn't help anyone. No one would want to live in that.
Sure, may I add one more thing I forgot?
Sure,
I
of
feel
course.
terrible, I forgot this. Reach is very small, but we started a program a few years ago with the Bottle Drop. Bottle Drop offered a small amount of money for us to come up with an idea. So we have a cleanup program that's going through right now. It only is involving 10 participants. But what we've done is we have 10 folks that are unhoused community members that meet with us, do a training, and then they do 2 hours a week of cleanup in a specific area, mostly around the central district. They have their vest, they have a lanyard identifying who they are, Ben PD knows that they're out there. All of their gear, the gloves, the bags, the grabbers are all kept at Bottle Drop. So they go in, they grab their things, they sign up in, then they call a case manager who then meets them at the end of their 2 hours. And we can only do 2 hours. In exchange for that, we want to make sure they're cleaning up. We want to talk about housing, mental health, substance use disorders. But then we do give them a gift card for $30. So it's $15 an hour for cleanup. And every shift ends with a case manager out there doing visual. And like I said, we have 10 participants. 10 right now. And that's about the max we can do until we grow capacity. The nice thing is that we've had some folks that haven't been able to make it. We do a 30-day trial. You cannot come to your shift under the influence. We've done trainings. I think our biggest problem to date was that some people were taking shopping carts out of people's hands to return them to the grocery store. So we've done a little training, and then the manager at Safeway, they can walk in and give those cards. It's not a huge dent, but what we're seeing is that people will come to me, and there was 2 China Hat participants that came and said, I haven't worked for 9 years, I actually got to my job on time. And he said, I really like getting some money. So he now has a job at a fast food restaurant part-time. But I think it's that empowering, and it's a sense of purpose. And I think they're taking some pride in, like, we're trying to change the optics. So I just want to mention that because that's a program area that we'd love to grow as well.
I love it, yes.
So-
It's kind of like the welding program at Deer Ridge where
Yes.
12 inmates are going to be certified in a year, and they can actually leave the place and have a family wage job, 40 to 60 bucks an hour. There's only 12 of them, trying to get that double through COCC. Kevin, is there anything else you want to add to your story?
I'm sorry, Kevin.
There's a million things I can say.
Yes.
Um,
Well, maybe you could come and speak at our group at a meeting in the future, with more than just a couple of minutes time.
We are, as many, some might know, I go to every meeting I can that applies to what we do. Understanding the issue better from different perspectives. We all have perceptions about everybody in the room, everyone in our lives, and getting a better understanding of the issue from every angle is really the only way to actually address it. We all have our own lives and our own things we involve ourselves in. We all look through really small windows at most things, and getting your feet on the ground where it's all happening is one of the best ways to understand an issue, and we definitely want to be part of it.
Great. Thank you so much. It's really, the numbers, your trash numbers were huge. So, yeah,
I don't like saying them.
right.
It's disturbing.
When you think how much a ton of hay, it's like how many bales it is and it, you know, and if you put it in that perspective, it's really,
You have your farm girl showing up.
I know, I'm sorry. Anyway, any other, public comments? Are we good?
Oh, we do have, one.
Okay,
Hey, can you hear me?
yes.
Hi. This is Linda Muir calling. I just wanted to call and to say thank you very much to all of you and to the sheriffs that are there today and Stacy Whitty, who's there. And I'm a big fan of all of your work that you've been doing in this process. And I just wanted to make a couple comments. I am really familiar with Kevin Dahlgren. I've personally done hours of outreach with him in Dirt World and with out in China Hat. I have personally experienced the fishbowl and seen the trash and the danger out there. I would really love, now that you have a report from Kevin Dahlgren, to have you guys invite him in to address the executive board of the Joint Homeless Office. I think you all will be impressed with what he brings to the party. He does have a 30-year history in drug and alcohol counseling and doing homeless outreach. And I think that his perspective is valuable, especially when it comes to helping to define a managed camp scenario, which I think is critical to the success of trying to get our arms around the homeless population in Deschutes County. I do agree that a lot of people probably would resist going into a managed camp, but like what Councilor Perkins said, they don't really know what it looks like or what it means. Specifically with the guidelines and the rules. I think that there's probably some really good compromise and a happy medium that could be met so that it could be a win-win situation. My biggest concern is how do you manage the infill that's coming in? The sheriffs have said this, that pretty much, you know, a very high percentage of the people that they're meeting are coming in from out of the area. The drugs are a big attractant. Our beautiful land around Bend and in Deschutes County is a big attractant. So how do you manage that infill? That's going to have a really serious plan put so that, you know, as people go into the managed camp and work on their rehousing plans and moving out of homelessness, which I think has got to be the #1 priority, is to get these people lifted up and out of the homeless situation. How are you going to stop more people from coming in and flooding the area? So I think a really great start would be to have Kevin Dahlgren come in and speak about this. He has so much experience firsthand, very valuable. And I really implore you to extend an invitation for him to talk to you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. Thank you for those. Are we good then? Chris, we're good to go?
Think so.
Okay, thank you so much.